And welcome. This is Mary Ellen McGonigal with your Friday afternoon MEM Edge Show. And this is the show where we bring you where the action is in the broader markets. We certainly had a little shakeout scare midweek, but we're going to take a look beyond not just the broader markets, but take a look underneath the hood. Some of these sectors that are continuing to firm up, as well as industry groups that are continuing to remain in uptrends and faring quite well as we head into the last part of December. And then first up here, I'll share with you some of the more impactful news that drove price action in particular areas last week. And first up, we did get some good numbers, not entirely unexpected, but relating to the housing markets. We saw housing starts jump to their highest level since May. We also saw existing home sales rise for the first time in 6 months, of course, all about a continuing declining interest rate backdrop with mortgage rates going down as well. We saw December consumer confidence remain quite strong, a little bit less than anticipated, but still elevated. And third quarter GDP data, it was revised lower amid a bit of a reduction in consumer spending, and that's not entirely bad news. The prior reports had shown explosive consumer spending growth. So when you're looking at the Federal Reserve's inflationary response, you do want to see a bit of receding in that consumer spending. Last up was a core inflation data, PCE, which is very closely watched by the Federal Reserve. That did come in today, and it did show, similar to recent reports, that inflation is continuing to taper. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what impact that news as well as other information had on the broader markets. We'll take a look right now. And here we are with the daily price chart of the S&P 500. And this week, the S&P was up a little less than 1% for the week. Let's take a look at that price action. We did have an advance continue to take place into the beginning of the week and a very sharp pullback on Wednesday. That was not news related. It occurred toward the end of the day. In the end, it did have a feel of profit taking. This is something I wrote about in my Wednesday midweek report. And in fact, we did see a nice recovery rally into the end of the week. We have that RSI and stochastics both in positive territory, with the uptrend in the S&P 500 remaining firmly in place. Beyond that, we do, of course, want to take a look at price action beneath the surface. And this is a 2-month daily price chart view of the 11 sectors. And I always add this relative strength indicator and sort it in descending order so that your stronger sectors are up here at the forefront and then weaker areas down below, always on the lookout for shifts, weakness into strength, or likewise strength into the weaker areas. First up, we can see that XLI industrials are remaining at the forefront. The group overall did underperform. However, there are areas beneath the surface that are continuing to remain strong. I will share that with you as we move through today's show. And real estate REIT stocks also remaining up at the forefront, an area that fares well in a declining interest rate area. However, it did underperform as well this week. The point here is that this move from strength to weakness is not going to be whippy and pronounced. It will be slow moving, which is a good thing. It does, for me, provide more confidence in what I'm seeing here. So as we move through, I did want to point out to you that XLK, this is the technology sector, and it is remaining in that middling area. Two of their biggest holdings are Microsoft and Apple, heavyweights there. We're going to take a look at both of those stocks, but they have been in a go nowhere pullback type of environment. And then some of the other areas within technology we will also take a look at, but because it's not up there at the forefront does not mean that there's not underlying strength and that uptrend very firmly still remaining in place. Communication services top performing this week, and a lot of that, pretty much everything having to do with Alphabet and and Meta. All three of these names that are in this sector far outpaced the broader markets. We'll take a look at their charts as well. And moving through, as we take a look at some of these weaker areas, quite clearly healthcare staples and utilities, those more defensive areas, are remaining down here in that lower quartile. Let's take a look at some sub-industry groupings, ETFs that I find to be very helpful as far as, again, getting you in front of where that strength is. And the importance there is you want to make sure that you are participating in that relative outperformance, that strength. Is it a reason as to why it is outperforming, and will that continue? Of course, will be taken into account as well. Up here front and center, I talked to you about those housing and home builder numbers coming in quite strongly. And let's take a look. This is XHB, the Homebuilders ETF. I'm going to add a 5-day simple moving average just to give you a little more idea as it relates to the key moving average of support for this fast moving ETF. And you can see that this week, a nice base building formation shaping up, considering that this group is overbought, given its sharp advance, but very much still in an uptrend. As we move through, taking a look at some of these other sub-industry groups, let's take a look at IWM. This is the small cap Russell 2000 ETF, top performer for the week, up over 2%. Nice, strong uptrend taking shape here. I will be sharing some small cap names that from my screening look quite compelling, as they are also in strong sectors and strong industries as well. Moving through with the ETFs, a couple of other areas that I did want to point out to you within technology. Here we are with the Semiconductor ETF. And you can see that this week overall, it was flat for the week, but really setting up quite nicely. It did pull back the most. Semiconductors and bank stocks were the two areas that sold off the sharpest in Wednesday afternoon. However, a nice recovery rally on the heels of earnings from Micron, a bellwether semiconductor name that guided growth estimates higher, which was tremendous as far as providing a relief rally for the group into year end. Some other areas I did want to point out to you that are a bit newer in their advance. This is IBB, and it is the Nasdaq Biotech ETF, and it's going to be a little more faster moving both to the upside and the downside relative to other biotech ETFs. However, the point here is that last week or the prior week, we entered a new uptrend. News today centered around a large pharmaceutical company purchasing a smaller biotech. And this is a way for these larger pharmaceutical companies to continue to grow. That type of merger activity is a real accelerant. And then other movers, as far as within that group, are going to be related to FDA approval or positive clinical trials, but biotech's on the move higher, which is certainly good news as it indicates risk on environment for investors. Another area we can take a quick look at here is medical devices, also in that healthcare space. And the prior week, it too did advance above this key 200-day simple moving average and overall outperformed with a 1.5% move higher for the week. This is an area with growth names that are involved within it. And taking a look here at the yield on the 10-year, this is great news as we are continuing to see a decline in interest rates. We ended at 3.9% with your general downtrend still very much in place. Of course, a great, wonderful backdrop for the broader markets to continue higher. Now, from here, let's go ahead and take a look at those mega cap FANG or Magnificent Seven names. These names did awaken this week relative to prior weeks where they underperformed. And then again, first up here, we have Meta, Alphabet, and Netflix, top performers. But Amazon also awakened. It was up 2.5% for the week. I did talk about this a little bit last week as it relates to Meta platforms entering into an uptrend from which a rally has developed. This is one of the a few mega names on my MEM Edge suggested holdings list, and it did rally 6.5% for the week. And that's a very nice advance for a large cap name. Here we are with Alphabet, another name. We had this nice double bottom formation shaping up, and then an excellent rally. The stock was up actually 6.7. Meta was up 5.5%. However, net here, when we are looking at Alphabet, we can see this nice 3-month base breakout and pretty decent volume on that, with the momentum metrics still early in their potential advance. Another name that we can look at, Netflix, we did, I believe, look at this quickly last week because it had recovered from this early December pullback. Not quite as dynamic with the momentums, but certainly faring quite well. Apple pulling back on negative news. And what you do want to be aware of here is we did have that negative MACD crossover, black line down through the red. Take a look at a historical precedence. It's not always going to mean that the stock is going to head lower when that MACD trends lower. We can see Apple back here in July continued higher. It's when that RSI turns negative and the stock breaks below support that you will want to sit up. So keep your eye on that. Now, from here, I did want to, and I promised that I would share with you some of these small cap names that are still a bit early in their potential advance, and also have that backdrop of a industry group or interest rates and other factors that could in fact continue to elevate the stock. Actually not super early with this particular name. This is Dreamfinders, DFH. I would argue early relative to other home builders. What you can do, of course, here with StockCharts is ask for that full quote. In turn, you will get that industry group, the sector, and then the market cap, 3.3 billion. We did see DFH break out of a lengthy base this week into a nice confirmed uptrend. Let's take a look at another smaller cap name that is certainly building related, and that would be Boise Cascade, BCC. And in fact, this stock did just break out of a flat base. Now, unfortunately, we are at a phase or period in the markets where a number of these names have already experienced significant moves. You're on the lookout for those that have broken out recently out of these bases into a nice uptrend with that nice MACD crossover indicating a new uptrend. A couple of other names that I will promise you are earlier in their advance. And first up is CMC. Basic materials stocks were up last week, and this is Commercial Metals, CMC, the ticker symbol. And we can see that it has broken back above this key potential area of resistance. We have that 10, 21-day simple moving average in an uptrend, and we've already had that golden cross formation when the shorter term moving average breaks above the longer term, and the MACD still early in its potential upside advance. From here, we can take a look at another certainly housing related name, and this is a small cap mortgage provider, ESNT. And we can see a $6 billion market cap. Let's go ahead and take a minute and mark this chart up because it really is quite attractive, certainly relative to a lot of, again, these names that have already made their moves and are long out of their bases. This particular name is just now, today, breaking out of a 5-month base. We can see that momentum shift here heading upward and still upside potential on that as well. Another name that we can look at in that small cap space is PLNT. This is Planet Fitness, and of course they are a workout company with locations throughout the US, and they had this gap up on earnings and then a nice continuation rally as the stock continues to trend higher. And I'm going to pivot here into just a couple of retail or certainly clothing and accessories related. Under Armour, and many of you may remember UAA if I take you back to their real true growth phase back here in 09 all the way through to 2015. Since then have fallen out of favor. We're looking at a weekly chart, but we can see that it is entering into a nice, actually that's a monthly chart, entering into a nice uptrend with UAA. Another name that has been on the move higher is American Eagle, AEO. You can see that uptrend still very firmly in place among the smaller cap names. And from here, I did want to share with you, if you have not been paying close attention, certainly it was in the headlines earlier this year, but more recently, this is Bitcoin. And you can see that it had a very significant uptrend. A lot of this more recent movement has to do with the announcement of new well-founded ETFs that are focused on Bitcoin, which in turn provided a bit of credibility to the whole industry. And in turn, we saw this nice sharp rally at the beginning of this month, a pullback. I would argue that Bitcoin is potentially setting up again if we can get that black line up through the red. However, from here, I do want to highlight for you some of the names that have really been benefiting from this pronounced move back into cryptocurrency, very much in a confirmed uptrend. This is Coinbase, COIN, and we can see the advance has been very, very sharp. From here, I will share with you another name that is a digital, again, holdings, Mara, and we can go ahead and add this 5-day simple moving average. And for those that think, my gosh, why am I showing you this? The move has already, the train has left the station. If you're on the lookout for potential longer term moves, actually, we can see that on this monthly chart, this is the first bar this month, and it is up triple digit. I will share that with you. However, I wanted to point out to you when cryptocurrency first came into vogue back here in 2020, the fact that these companies that are involved can really have significant moves higher. Take a look at that RSI just heading into positive territory, MACD crossing over. And also we can take a look at one last stock. I'm not sure how it's going to show up on the monthly, but this is Riot. Let's go ahead and take a look at a daily price chart. And this particular company is a little bit earlier in its upside advance. We'll go ahead and pull up that full quote here and get a little bit more information. And we can see that they are a software company that does in fact deal with cryptocurrency. Nice uptrend, continuing to shape up, MACD trending higher with further upside potential. And I did fail to mention just a couple of other names because let's take a quick look here back. We're going to backtrack a little and take a look at the industrials, XLI remaining elevated. And there are a couple of areas here, small cap names, and they are marine transportation. That was the top performing underlying group within the industrial sector last week. And as an example, we have Nordic American Tanker, NAT. Let's go ahead and pull up that full quote again, and I will share with you that it is indeed in industrials and a marine transportation company and advancing above each of these moving averages. In other words, the resistance is now behind it. We have that MACD just entering into positive territory, likewise with that RSI. Another small cap name in that space is Teekay Tankers, TNK, and we can see it has this nice reversal from this pullback entering into a base breakout and a nice uptrend with that MACD just entering into positive territory. Next up, I did want to follow up from a question from a viewer last week, and it was everything to do with my outlook for the broader markets going into next year. And I do appreciate any questions, so please, by all means, add questions this week if they come to mind. But for this week, I am going to share one chart that for me has me very constructive on the outlook for the markets next year, among the fact that we are seeing interest rates declining and that there is anticipation that we will see rate cuts toward the second half of the year, all very bullish for the broader markets. But what we are looking at here is the S&P 500 large cap index, and it is a monthly chart. So let me go ahead and share with you some of the metrics that make this longer term chart, which provides you with a longer term view for the broader markets, very interesting. So we can see first up that this MACD has experienced this downtrend reversal, and it is coming from a relatively very low level. Now, of course, we did have this big run up into 22. This is what occurred during that bear market period, and now we are beginning to see a shift in the longer term momentum. We need only go back to other periods such as the 09 bear market, and of course, the 2020 bear market. And when we see that monthly turnaround, which was toward the third Q of 2020, that much further upside was ahead. We can also take a look at the RSI, which had trended positively a little bit earlier this year and is regaining its upside momentum. Both characteristics are quite constructive, and we are now poised on the S&P 500 to hit this year-end 2022 high. And if we can advance above that, we should have clear skies ahead. I will continue to elaborate on this further in my show next week. And that's it for this Friday. Everyone have a fantastic long weekend. I'm going to look for you again here next Friday.